I mean, this sounds so cheesy, but this has been a real big lesson. And like when you love something, you let it go. I guess, I don't know if this has been said publicly, but Jensen and I were the ones, at least we were led to believe that we were the ones who were going to ultimately decide when the show ended. And so we had this conversation for a decade. You know, we had this sort of like, okay, what do we do? You know, I'm falling in love with a girl and she lives here. We ultimately made the decision, I think, believe it or not, I think he and I made the decision during the filming of season 13 that season 15 would be it. And so as far as that's concerned, that was our news to share. And that sounds arrogant. And I don't mean it to sound like, well, we decided. And by the way, I don't want that. I don't want somebody showing up my house like protesting. So it just felt like, you know, we'd had this discussion with people we love and care about and other members of the cast and crew. And we sort of said like, okay, we got to get home. You know, he and his wife and kids live in Austin. Jen and I and the kids live in Austin. And so we had made that commitment to each other, like to stick with it. And we had had a few dinners with a few higher ups who will remain nameless because I don't want to sell them out, where they would say, hey, you sure? You sure? And we had to go like, we're sure. And we weren't sure. We weren't sure at all. But we were, you know, 60-40. So the show had already been destined to finish its current iteration in season 15. And then, yes, Jensen and I were in Los Angeles. I think we had done some conventions, and the four of us sat down, Bob Singer, Andrew Dabb, Jensen Ackles, and myself, and heard like, okay, like what's this season look like? Like what's going on? So that was the first we heard of the story. I mean, I think we had spent 2,500 days on set with each other. And so we had talked about it left, right, and center. And so we had our ideas. We had gone through every idea. But I do think that that was the first time we heard like, okay, so here's the way it's gonna play. Let's hear it.
Yeah. Were you pretty instantly on board? I know you and Jensen had like different experiences with that.
I was absolutely 100% instantly on board. Being a fan of storytelling and knowing the tropes and the archetypes that have been around for generations and generations, I heard the story and thought, oh my God, that's tragic. Like wonderfully tragic and wonderfully optimistic in some way, shape, or form. But this is the way the story should be. I mean, whatever they said would have been a shot in the gut. If it was like, listen, it turns out it's all been a dream. You're at a diner and you end up in jail like Seinfeld, or we just cut mid-scene like Sopranos. No matter what you hear, if it's like, hey, you die happy in bed, you'd be like, I die in a bed. You know, like there's some bit, or not that it's about death, but if you hear the way something's going to end, like, hey, after your trip around the world on a motorcycle, you pull in and you run out of gas, or you don't. And you're like, well, we should have run out of gas, or we shouldn't run out of gas. Like, no matter how the story ends, I think there's some degree of like, what? But beyond that, I was able to be as objective as possible, as soon as possible, and go, man, that's a great story. That's a great way for Sam and Dean to continue to tell their story.
So then pre-COVID, when you actually get like the script, what was your experience of like actually reading it for the first time?
I want to be very careful with this and not use hyperbole. I think I cried every time I read the script. And not because of what happens in the script. This is not like, oh, they are this and that, and they're going through this and that. I think it's just, it was weighing so heavily on me as Jared that I knew it was affecting me. And so I was sort of like, I don't want to lose myself in the scenes. You know, I mean, we have all sorts of scenes in the episode, and some are super silly and some are super strong. And I read every scene and cried every scene. And I was like, you gotta get past this, Jared, because, and I'm an emotional guy. I'm a Cancer, and I'm a dad and a husband. And I'm sort of like, the wind is blowing. There's a kite in the sky. A balloon is going up into space. It seems like every scene I read in the script was was triggering. And so for me, I wanted to kind of like experience it over and over and over again, so that when they called action, I could be Sam and not Jared, because I'm not telling Jared's story. Jared is learning from the life and experience that Sam is having and going through. But I wanted to make sure that by the time, as much as humanly possible for me, that as soon as they called action, I could be like, all right, I'm Sam, and I'm committing to Sam and his experience.
It's been interesting, you know, like talking to Bob and Jensen and people about like the moment when they really kind of felt like it resonated that it was over for them. Like, you know, Jensen talked about taking off his boots for the last time in his trailer, and Bob talked about driving away on the, you know, seeing Vancouver in his rearview mirror. Like, did you have a moment or
oh God, I hadn't heard that. I'm sorry.
I know, it's really sweet. But when did it like really, or has it hit you at this point that like it's over?
Yeah, there was the last day. There were a lot of different scenes. And you know, like different conversations with different crew guys and gals and cast and stuff. And then there was, so let me start over. So we shot the pilot, and then they said, hey, you're filming in Vancouver. And I was like, where's that? And so Jensen knew. But we carpooled up to Vancouver, up I-5 from LA, because I was there for Gilmore Girls and this and that. I think it was Sunday, September 13th, I guess. And he was driving this big old U-Haul full of all of our stuff from 15 years. You know, we had kind of like, it was all going to Austin from Vancouver. So it was all in the back of the U-Haul, and he drove it across, and I was right behind him. And it was like that drive, it's only like 45 minutes to an hour from where my apartment was in Vancouver to the border, to crossing the U.S. And it was right during all the wildfires. And so like the sky was really weird. It felt like Supernatural episode or something. Honestly, it was weird. It was like orange sky, and you can't see anything, and it's kind of stinky. It smells like a barbecue in your car. But we crossed the border together through American Customs, and they're going like, what you doing? And we're like, hey, we're, we were here shooting a TV show, and we're going back home. And they were like, all right, what show? We're like, Supernatural. And they were like, oh, yeah, y'all been coming back and forth for a while. We're like, we sure have. We sure have.
It has to feel good, though. Like, you've said you love this finale, though. It has to feel good knowing that, like, you love the way this thing you love so much ends.
Yeah, I do. I feel like, when there's something you love deeply, I mean, this sounds so cheesy, but this has been a real big lesson. And like, when you love something, you let it go, and you let it live on as it is, and let it kind of go on with integrity, And so we were so strong. I mean, trying to be objective, and I'm not talking about like, damn, Jared, you done good in 13 or 14 or 15 or something. This wasn't like, man, I'm doing really good, really goodly, I should go and walk away. It's more like, man, this show is so powerful right now. I want to go out on a high note. And Ackles felt the same way, I know, because we talked, several times a week. And Thursdays can be really difficult. But I feel really proud to have been a part of this. And I can't stress enough that I feel like I was just one of the people there that was there trying to tell a great story. And I think that's why when I heard the way that season 15 was being planned, why I went like, man, that's great and that sucks, but it's the best way to tell the story. But I still will always, 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 always remember my good dear friend Sam Winchester.